huge to have you on $2 late fee and podcasting after dark, because what we're doing a crossover episode between two podcasts. I like to describe myself as I have two sister wives, one in Dustin and one in Corey, and I'm somewhere in the middle and sandwich, I suppose. But thank you so much for being on our show.
Yeah, I'm excited. Can you tell me what the $2 late fee title came from?
Yes. Well, can you guess what that's from?
No.
Okay, so $2 late fee refers to the video store days in the 80s. When if you didn't return a movie by 7 p.m. the next day, you got charged $2. My store was $2.
Right.
Blockbuster was more.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so long ago, but it really wasn't. I mean, when you think about it, like it was just not that long ago, but it seems like forever that we used to rent videos.
Exactly.
Man.
It really does. It really does. So $2 late fee is primarily we do 80s, revisiting 80s movies, late 70s. We dip into early 90s. And Podcasting After Dark is a breakdown of all the movies that you weren't supposed to be up watching, but these guys were.
Yeah, so same era and everything, but we focus more on cult movies, versus the mainstream stuff. Like, for example, we covered Rennie Harlin's Prison in season 1 of the show. So we like to get in real deep with the obscure stuff and really champion those movies that sometimes a lot of people haven't seen or haven't seen in a long time. I
don't think I've ever seen Prison. What? No, I don't remember there even being like a premiere or a screening or anything. I honestly don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah. That was a bad experience for you.
That's
then?
Amazing.
No, it wasn't. I do remember, I remember a few things about it. We shot it in Wyoming and it was incredibly frustrating because how can I turn that off? It's dinging. Let's see. Well, I should have done that before. So I just remember the wind was really, really bad in Wyoming. Like when we got there, they were telling us all these statistics. Like at the time, Wyoming had the highest suicide rate. And after being there for a week, I'm like, well, no wonder the friggin' wind never stops. I mean, just literally, I brought my bike and I would be riding my bike to the set and I would be going downhill, pumping like I was going uphill.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. But, Vigo, who was, I don't know if that was his first film, but he was very new on the scene. And I remember Rennie invited us to lunch at the time, which was the big Hollywood restaurant to go to, which was Mustache Cafe on Melrose.
Okay.
And we showed up and, I had my linen shorts and my linen jacket and all, and Rennie was there. And then Vigo shows up with, like a pair of jeans that looked like, he'd had him for 25 years and a t-shirt and no shoes.
Oh, no shoes?
No shoes at all. And so Rennie looks down and he goes, yeah, let's see. And I know he's thinking, I wonder if they're going to let us in the restaurant. They did. But I just remember thinking, oh, this guy is just, he's really, he's so odd and he's out there, but he was so amazing to work with. And I don't think I had a lot of scenes with Vigo, but he was, even then it was like, you could tell this guy is, quite an artist and, dancing to his own drummer.
And no doubt, Rennie Harlin was pretty new on the scene with that film as well. So
yes.
There was the energy in that movie, conducive to because of that.
Well, I think it was Rennie's first American film. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I remember there being a big thing about Rennie, like, oh, this is his first American film and and I know that he did not want me. I was like his second choice. So I came into that feeling like, okay, and my part, I don't remember, like I always had scenes that weren't with everybody because I had like one-on-one scenes. So
with like Lane Smith, for example.
Exactly. I worked a lot with Lane. So I was not isolated, but I wasn't in with the gang, obviously I wasn't in the prison with everybody. So it was sort of that kind of a movie, but it was a good experience and Rennie was fine, and I had fun with the makeup woman, Suzanne, and I can't remember her last name, but she was hilarious and just kept us laughing. When you're on location, when you're on a remote location like that, you got to get along with people on the crew or it's just torture.
The wind is blowing and the people are killing themselves, and
Yes.
Suzanne is the light through the darkness.
Making us laugh. Yeah.
Well, also too, the subject matter, that movie was so dark, and also that was a Richard Band or like a Charles Band production, I think. So it had some of that Empire Pictures. Maybe that's why you didn't have a premiere, because maybe it was a straight to video kind of thing.
Too much. Yeah. Too expensive, probably.
Well, and like Corey said, we covered prison on the show on Podcasting After Dark, but your whole filmography from like Death Spa,
Yes.
even Death Spa.
Somebody literally about 10, well, I was directing at Hamilton Music Academy. I was directing their musicals, and somebody said, "Oh, you did a film called Death Spa." And I was like, I did. I had completely forgotten that I even did it.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
guess they had Googled me, the students had Googled me. And I was like, oh God. And then like, I could feel my mind going back into the cobwebs of long ago and going, oh yeah, because that was sort of when I was transitioning from being a dancer into being an actress. So a lot of that transition time was, I wasn't doing dance jobs anymore, but they weren't like, in my opinion, full on acting gigs yet.
Yeah.
That was kind of a in between.
Well, so you started out as a dancer then?
Yeah, I did. And was super lucky because I didn't start training until I was 16. And started getting work at about 20. And my last job really when I was trying to get out of it was Solid Gold. And I had been out on the road singing and dancing, singing with bands. And I came back to LA and started to run out of money. And I was like, oh my God. And then there was this open call, which I did not go to. I was out of town for. And then I had gone to NBC affiliates. Do you remember they used to have like affiliates shows for the networks?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to that audition, and the same choreographer, Anita Mann, who was choreographing the NBC affiliate show, was doing Solid Gold. And she goes, oh, we just had a huge audition and there was nobody, and I need you. And I was like, there was like 2,000 people at that audition. I'm sure you could have found somebody. But anyways, I got the job. And so that was lucky. But I knew that was the end. I was trying to get out of it. And so I started studying acting while I was doing Solid Gold. And when I knew I needed to stop acting, dancing, I looked around and I just thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know how to type. I don't know. I can't work at a bank. And then I thought, oh, I'll go to acting class. And as soon as I got to acting class, I was like, oh my God, you mean you can express with words coming out of your mouth? This is fabulous.
I can use my voice, and not
Yeah.
just my legs.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nice to hear when like that sort of it strikes like that, and because we were talking to Wings Hauser, and he had that moment where he was playing football and everything, and then he did this, like he did the first play, and it all hit him. He's like, this is where I'm meant to be and everything. So it's nice to hear that when you insert yourself into that moment, you kind of just you can feel it.
Yeah, it was so different because with dancing, when you get nervous or you have some, anxiety or anything, you really can process it through your body, as you're dancing or as you're performing. Like when you get nervous before performance, it actually enhances your performance because, suddenly you're kicking and you're hitting your head instead of right here, but with singing, it's totally different because you can't, for me, singing is the most vulnerable. You're just so vulnerable when you sing in front of people. But with the acting, there was so much internal work that was already sort of my wheelhouse because I loved kind of the inner journey. And I was, quite a student of, psychology and figuring out why things were the way they were, that when I got to acting class, and luckily I studied with a man, David LeGrant, who was fantastic, and he was more method than anything else, and so it just all fit together and was like, oh, I get it, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then obviously, like you said, Death Spa is a is a blip on the wall, but I got to tell you, I saw it at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica a few years back at one of their horror fests.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And it was definitely the one that everybody wanted to see.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, everybody was going nuts for that movie. And then there's a funny line in that where you're picking up on a guy in the gym and he's like, I'm sorry, you're what does he say? You're VHS and I'm beta or something like that.
Yes, I remember that.
So much fun. Like that movie is it's one of Dustin and I coined a phrase called masterpiece. Sometimes there's masterpieces. It definitely falls into the, whoa, this is horribly bad kind of category, but it's still fun. It's a fun movie to see.
Yeah. I felt that way. I mean, I don't think I ever saw Death Spa either. I have this sort of reoccurring thing in my life where I'm doing something, but my mind is over there thinking of the next thing. And it's terrible. I really did not stop until I was like in my 50s of like, I'm going to be here now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And not be thinking, what's the next thing? I don't know where that came from, probably my childhood. But so like a lot of these early films that I did, I remember being there and doing them, but I know I was in my head thinking, I got to find another film. I got to find the next show. I got to, you know, and Death Spa was one of those because I was still trying to, I think Death Spa and I was in Perfect. I think those were like these, you know, I got hired because I was a dancer and I had this dancer body. And it wasn't until I got hired for Masters of the Universe where I felt like, oh, they hired me because I'm an actress, even though there wasn't a lot of lines. I didn't have a lot of lines in that movie, but I remember getting that movie and it was literally like, I felt like I had run a touchdown in the last 4 seconds of the Super Bowl and broke the tie. It was the greatest feeling ever. And it was just, you know, it's like a nothing film, but that feeling of like breaking through that barrier because, you know, back then, you know, dancers weren't becoming actors.
No.
Now, you know, you do everything. You're an actor, you better know how to sing and to dance. And if you're a dancer, you better know how to act. And everybody does everything. But back then, I never told people I was a dancer when I would go for acting jobs because that was literally like, oh yeah, no, never mind, she can't act. That was the rap that, you know, you can't act if you're a dancer. So pass. Let's get the real actors in here.
It's a really good point. So you were finally convinced. You're like, there's no way Tila is dancing in this movie. So I think I'm safe. Like,
well, I knew that I had gotten hired partly because of my body, because when I went for the costume design meeting and they had like some pieces for me to try on, I said to Julie Weiss, I think it was, that was costume designer. I said, so this stuff is supposed to be the armor. And she's like, yeah. And I go, so it's not covering anything, any vital organs. It's literally just accentuating, you know, my waist and my breasts and my, you know, but so I knew that was part of it. And I had auditioned for it so many times. I must've gone in 6 times for Gary Goddard and the producers. And it was all about, you know, rolling on the floor and then pretending I had a gun and going, you know, and making all the sound effects myself, like literally doing the whole thing in the office myself. So obviously it was, you know, a lot of it was action and, you know, looking the part. So I knew that was part of it, but at least I was out of a 5, 6, 7, 8.
And here's He-Man. Wait, what?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have a son who's 7 going on 8. And when he was about 3, he really got into like old school He-Man cartoons and whatnot. And I took him to PowerCon a few years ago and he dressed up like He-Man and I was Battle Cat. And they ended up putting us on that show, The Toys That Made Us, like showing clips and whatnot. You were there because they were doing like a Q&A or something for Masters of the Universe. And just the fandom behind your role, that movie has gotten bigger.
I know,
you know?
I know. I took my grown son, he's 22 now. And I think whenever was like the anniversary of something, I don't know how many years it was some anniversary. And they did a screening at the Egyptian in Hollywood. And Gary was there, Gary Goddard, and a few of the actors. And I took my son. And when it was starting, I hadn't seen it forever. And I said, honey, you know, this like don't expect anything, you know, and don't expect anything from the special effects. And afterwards he was like, Mom, it was actually kind of good. And I felt like it sort of held its own, you know, I mean, obviously not compared to the Marvel and all that stuff, but there was some story there. And Gary hired, you know, he hired some good actors, James Tolkien. I mean, Frank Langella was amazing, you know, in spite of the mask that, you know, literally didn't move at all, but
Meg Foster, right?
Meg and Christina Pickles.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
all amazing.
somebody named Courtney. I don't know.
Yeah, and Courtney.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all became really good friends, including Ann Coates, the editor. And yeah, we used to have dinner parties all the time. That was a really fun group. It was a good first, movie for me.
We all talk about like in these movies that you consider B movies or whatever. I think it's a great movie and I think it holds up well, and I think that is becoming the general zeitgeist about the movie. But one thing that we talk about on Podcasting After Dark and Dustin and Zach on $2 late fee is like sometimes you can also feel that X factor behind the scenes, that even if the movie itself isn't perfect or whatever, you can still feel the love that went into it. You can still feel the positive energy that everyone had behind the scenes. And I think that's one of the X factors that propels movies like Masters of the Universe into like this point where now they're cult classics. Everybody loves it still. It's, people champion that movie now. And I was alive. I saw it in the theater when I was a kid and I was like, what is this movie? But now I'm like, this is beautiful. This is amazing, But was the experience positive like that behind the scenes?
It was really great. And I don't know if it was because it was my first kind of real big, break. But it was, I had a ball. John Cipher and I did broadsword classes. They brought in a guy that was a broadsword stunt man. And we did that. And then we had rehearsals, like having rehearsals before you start shooting. That's like, what? Who does that anymore? Nobody that I know. So that was really great. And I didn't know any of the financial stuff because Gary Goddard was very we didn't know any of that was going on. I just, we got our paychecks. That's all I know. And I had no idea that there were days when nobody knew that they were getting, if they were getting a paycheck or not. So he kind of protected us from that. But we had so much fun. We shot a lot of nights. I can't remember, but it was, I want to say like 3 or 4 weeks of nights in Whittier when that whole, when Skeletor comes down and all that. And when you're shooting nights, you already feel like you're in a kind of a camp, a summer camp when you're doing a film with everybody, but then you're shooting nights. It's even more intense because you're coming home. I remember listening to Rick Dees in the morning, driving home, and I was always driving against, I was driving against traffic, and I was all jacked up on like Reese's peanut butter cups and coffee is what I lived on then.
That sounds
and
wonderful.
I'd get home and, you'd be going to sleep. And so I never saw none of my friends or my family or anything for all those weeks. So we really bonded that group. We were all Robbie McNeil, Courtney, we all had dinner parties and we'd hang out, even for months afterwards. Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
A good group.
I love that. And Whittier is so random even now.
Right?
Just, was it a warehouse or something? Just like
it was, well, a lot of the, when Billy Barty is trying to do the, get the machine, the octode rectifier or whatever, trying to get that to work. And all these, those like the park and outside and I think there was a library, all that was in Whittier. And then the roof, if you remember the rooftop where Skeletor comes down and they have an interaction, that was all Whittier. So even like the opening stuff with Courtney and she worked at a Frosty Freeze kind of place or something.
Yeah.
That was all in Whittier. So a lot of the exterior stuff was there.
Must have been nice driving against traffic though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know how SAG, they have those rules if you're so many miles away. And of course it was like 1 mile inside.
Oh, just shy. Oh, I hate that. Yep.
That's why Whittier. That's why I chose Whittier.
Yeah.
Exactly. It fits the bill, the billing bill.
Well, you were saying, you had a great relationship with everybody on set. And I think of the movie Skin Deep you made, and you didn't have a huge part in it, but you had a very memorable part in it. And you're working with probably, in my opinion, one of the most talented comedians of our generation in John
God
Ritter.
bless him.
How was that experience?
So great. He was, and Blake Edwards too. They were just wonderful. I had read the script and originally Blake wanted me for, and I'm trying to remember which role it was. It was one of the other roles. I don't remember which one. But I know that when I read the script and I got to the part of a glowing condom, I was laughing so hard. And my husband at the time, my now ex-husband, it was like, what is so funny? And I literally had tears streaming down my cheeks. And I just took the script and went like this and handed it to him. And then 10 minutes later, he was same thing. He was killing himself laughing. So then they told me I booked the movie. We were working on the deal, and they said, oh, by the way, he doesn't want you for that role. He wants you for this role. And I was like, oh my God, it's so iconic. That scene.
It's maybe one of the funniest scenes in the movie, outside of the night after he's with the bodybuilder and then he's in the dance class. So, you know, it's just.
Well, what about when Julianne Phillips, I think,
yes.
with the like the tens machine where she's and he comes out and he's
twitching.
Oh my God, that at the screening, I was roaring over that scene. His physical comedy was like no other.
I introduced my wife to that movie probably about 6 months ago. So she saw it for the first time. It was a sort of a rediscovery for me. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. Boy, does it hold up fantastically. It is hilarious. And that scene is my favorite scene where he's just like twitching because it goes on for like 5 minutes. It keeps going. And I'm just like, oh, and I grew up on Three's Company. I was just like, I miss John Ritter so much.
I know.
You know, he was just a tour de force.
He really was. And what a loss, just a shock and so sad. Yeah. He was great to work with. Blake was too, but him and Blake were literally like two junior high kids, two junior high boys, because when we shot that scene, the glowing condom scene, it probably would have taken maybe a day, but it was 3 days. And it was because they kept coming up with more and more ideas.
Yeah.
And at the time I was still going to Harvey Lembeck's, you know, I just would go into that class whenever, the improv class, because it was great. You didn't have to prepare, you just show up. So if you're a working actress, it works great. You can just show up and still be, you know, keeping, you know, yourself on your toes. And John came in one day when I was there and participated. And so, you know, he was so brilliant. And he would be improvising, you know, on the set, and then that would, you know, tickle Blake, and then Blake would go, oh, try this, or they'd be whispering something and they'd be doing something different and wouldn't tell me, you know, and they just were hilarious, the two of them together.
Well, there's something so special. I'm thinking about some of the random movies we've mentioned so far and some of the more memorable ones. When we were younger, we didn't have IMDb. We didn't have, however, we kind of see what's coming next, right? And we just had, okay, oh, that actor's in this movie. Oh, that actor's in this movie. And every time you would pop up in these movies, I'd go, oh, there's Chelsea Field. I love her. She's great. And it wasn't just Tila. It was like, oh, Skin Deep. I mean, like we said, podcasting after dark are movies we probably shouldn't have watched when we were a certain age. And I'm seeing Skin Deep when I'm like in my, you know, early teens or whatever. And,
oh boy.
And yeah, which is a little awkward. You know,
that's old for you, Zach. You're normally like 6.
Yeah, normally I'm 6 and my mom takes me
stories. You're normally like 4.5 when you're watching Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah, no kidding, Chelsea. I can tell you stories about my mom taking me to movies. It's like, oh, let's see this movie. I'm like, why, Mom? Why would I don't? That's not appropriate, even at that age.
But early teens.
You're telling your mom this isn't appropriate for me, Mom. We shouldn't.
I did. She took me to see like Romancing the Stone when I was 7 or something, and I'm like, what is? Oh, this is uncomfortable right now. There's a love scene. But anyways, but you know, I every time you popped up on screen, it was such a breath of fresh air, because you brought a certain charm to every role that you've been in. Sincerely, I mean that 100%. And you know, from Skin Deep, the next movie I saw you in at least was Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, and I'm like, okay, this movie, I liked it at the time on a certain level. We were going to be actually breaking that movie down, the 3 of us, by scene, much to Dustin's dismay.
Good luck.
What are your feelings on that movie that you made, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man?
Well, Simon Windsor, the director, was a very, very nice man.
I love that you're searching for something right now.
So here's a little behind the scenes story on this one. So Mickey Rourke had a girlfriend at the time, or maybe his wife, I'm not sure. I think she was a model. I don't remember. You guys probably know her name. And
Carrie Otis, I think.
Yes. And he wanted her for the role. And when I auditioned, and I'm assuming she auditioned, and Don saw my tape, he said, so Don Johnson was in my camp and Mickey was in his girlfriend's camp. And
for the role of Virginia Slim.
The Virginia Slim, that's it. So I obviously got it. And Mickey was, maybe this is how he is on the set for everybody, but he was really extremely not, he was just rude to me.
Yeah.
At the end of the scene where we're in a coffee shop, and like, God bless, it's all good. It didn't affect me other than, I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I got the job, like, don't punish me,
Really?
It's like killing the messenger,
I don't know. It could be something totally different, but he was not a nice person to me. When we did this scene we were in the coffee shop, and I don't know, we're talking. And so we're doing the coverage. We do the master, we're doing the coverage, and he goes and does my coverage first. And then he turns around and Mickey does completely different stuff. Like so different that my reaction shots were like this.
Wow.
And I was thinking, oh, okay, well, they're bummer. I love playing in scenes. Let's play, but give me a shot, give me a chance. And it could have been also that, playing devil's advocate, maybe he was more into the scene and started thinking of different ideas, but it was so completely different when they turned around on him. And then at the end, they're like, okay, cut, we're moving on to scene, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm getting out of the booth, and everybody, the whole, the set breaks up and everyone's moving and doing their job. Right. And as I'm getting up, he goes, Chelsea. And I kind of look, because I'm totally shocked that he's even acknowledging me about anything.
Wow.
And I go, oh yeah. And he goes, thank you. And he puts his hand out like this, and I go, oh, okay, thanks. And it wasn't like it was the last scene we were going to have together or anything. Sometimes when that's your last scene, you'll do that with an actor. And I go, oh, okay, you're welcome, and thank you. And I go to shake his hand, and he has a jelly donut in his hand, and he's I'm like, how?
What a clown!
5?
Yeesh.
Are you 5 years old?
Did he have a red nose on too, and go waka
Right.
waka?
Waka, waka.
A hand buzzer and a
my
whoopee
God.
cushion.
I'm just like, okay. So, but the big thing about that set was that both of Dawn and Mickey were, very much in competition about who was the bigger star, I guess, or something. And I would come on the set and I'd be like, okay, ready for the scene. And Simon would say to the first AD, where's Don? He's like, he's on his way. Okay, great. So then Don would get there and he'd say, are we ready? And Simon would say, well, we're just waiting for Mickey. The PA is getting him. And he's like,
Oh.
all right, let me know when he's here. We'd walk back to his trailer. Mickey had come on the set and he'd say, where's Don? And he said, well, he was here, but he just walked back. He was waiting for you. So he's coming. We're getting him right now. Mickey goes, okay, let me know when he's here. Literally, like poor Simon Windsor would be looking at his watch going, tick tock, cha-ching, cha-ching. Hello, people.
Yeah.
Burning money.
Wow.
So and that was, those were the years where, I mean, he was worried about it. Simon was for sure. But Last Boy Scout, it was just like the amount of takes that was when people there was no end to the money then. So, people were wasting it left and right.
The 90s, early 90s. Can I ask you, were you made aware before you had the role, you were made aware of this Mickey Rourke drama? You were made aware he didn't want you before you had it? No. Okay.
No. Afterwards, I don't remember how I found that out. It was either my agent or, it could have been Dawn, but it might've been Dawn who told me that. I don't know. I don't remember how I found out, but I know that, I knew that, and I was like, well, whatever.
I feel like that makes sense in retrospect. Yes. Yeah. Right.
It makes me think of that scene you were talking about in the diner. He's covered in whipped cream or something on his face because he's eating breakfast with you, and he's like mucking up the scene. I remember.
That's it. That was it. None of that on my take.
Wow.
None. So they definitely had no reaction shots to cut to.
Yeah.
Because you would have been like, wipe your face because there's garbage all over it.
I do remember the script. Sometimes this happens, but like the scene, which is the reverse of Butch Cassidy, where he's with the gun is hot. That scene, which I remember reading, when it was in the script, I remember it was much better. It was much better on the page. Yeah. And that was a shame because sometimes, not always, but sometimes you read things on the page and then you see them and you're like, oh, bummer. It was so much better on the page. And I don't know where that went wrong, but
Yeah, that's a feeling that I kind of had personally watching it, wondering, Don Michael Paul, actor, director, writer, etc. Probably had a more fleshed out screenplay, and it feels like there were scenes that were left on the cutting room floor.
I think so, because I do remember liking the script and thinking, oh, this is good and this is kind of clever.
Yeah.
And it could have been because of the between the two of them that things got messed up, or I don't know, maybe it was the way they cut it together. And yeah,
but you had a cool role as this cop, this LA cop, riding a motorcycle and a badass in your own right.
Yep.
Did you
that was
on the motorcycle, like where you
I just pulled up and stopped, and then I think I pulled away, but then the rest of the time they wouldn't let me do it. But it was really, I remember when I pulled up and stopped, I was like, holy shit, because it was really heavy. It was hard to hold up. Wasn't, you had to like really be ready for it. And the first time I did it, I was like, oh my God. I mean, it didn't go down, but it could have easily gone down.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you had a level of heart with your role in a movie that could be totally wacky or totally stupid or whatever, but you're the romantic aspect of this movie where, you're clearly in love with the Marlboro Man, Robert, and
Don Johnson.
Don Johnson. Yeah. And there's all this wacky stuff going on, but it was a moment like when I saw it in the theater, I felt this way. And then watching it again recently, I felt this way. There was a lot of heart in your relationship, and kind of feeling bad for the guy that you're going to get married to, because he's like, who's this dude who just shows up?
Yeah.
And that was nice. It was nice to have a little bit of humanity in a otherwise bizarro film.
Yeah. I've definitely done a lot of films that have, a lot of testosterone in them. So, yeah. I have a funny little story that's, that happened right before I was doing the dark half.
Yeah.
And I was in, I think
George Romero, directed that.
George
right?
Romero
Timothy
directed
Hutton.
it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we shot it in somewhere in Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh. Yeah, I was in Pittsburgh. And I think at the time I was doing 3 movies. I was doing that. I had just gotten Harley Davidson, and there was one other Was it
Dust Devil? Was that the other one?
No, because that was in
Nice try, Zach. Nice try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're only 5 for 9.
No. Normally I'm a film
5 for 6.
Anyways.
Dust Devil was shot in Namibia, so I know it wasn't that, but there was one other. It might have been Skin Deep. Maybe like I was finishing Skin Deep, and anyways, I was doing kind of like finishing up one. I had just booked Harley, and I was on my way to Pittsburgh, and I got to Pittsburgh, and I was in this funky hotel, and the door knocks, and I'm like, who is it? And it's like, oh, florist delivery. And I was like, okay. And there was already like a basket of fruit or something from the producers, which they usually do. So this big, huge, beautiful flower arrangement comes in, and I'm like, who is this from? And I open up the card, and it says, "Dear Chelsea, congratulations. Keep your hands off my husband, Melanie."
Amazing.
Yeah.
I hadn't even started the movie yet. She had it sent to where I was before.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that might have been, in the middle of
That's amazing.
some marital problems. So
Yeah. Well,
Or she just did that on every movie.
I don't know. I didn't really know. I didn't even understand. I called some of my girlfriends. I'm like, what? And they were like, oh, he had an affair or whatever. There was some gossip or some tabloid stuff that I didn't follow. I didn't know about. So I was like, oh, okay.
Well, I mean,
Thanks
and
for
this
the
is safe
warning.
to say, we said this offline, Corey and I both were marveling in the fact that we were in love with Don Johnson as a beautiful man. He's a beautiful, rugged man, and Corey's like, I wonder what he smells like,
I watched it the other night again with my wife, and I'm just like, babe, Don Johnson, my God, my God. And she's like,
bromance.
I know.
Yeah. It's a very,
Yeah,
like,
that's a normal human reaction to seeing Don Johnson, I think.
Yeah, he was so great with me. He was so nice.
good.
And even
That's great.
years later, I ran into him at CBS at the upfronts, and he just was like, he's just still, so lovely and kind. And very much like gentlemanly, just very much treats women like very gentle, like he's a gentleman, and I'm sure he can be a dog, but he wasn't that way with me. And very generous, on the set, very generous with, the scenes and his time. And I do have to say, the first time I met him, he has this, like, of everybody I've ever worked with or been around, you walk in and it's just like, you almost go, because he has so much like vibration of like star quality. It just oozes out of him.
Well, you hold your own with all of these testosterone filled dudes, sincerely, because the list of the movies you've been in and the co-stars you've been with have been what many would consider some of the biggest male screen icons of the 80s and 90s. But you hold your own, you kick ass.
Bruce Willis. Yeah.
I mean, Bruce Willis in Last Boy Scout, obviously, that's a huge movie. Working with an amazing director. You've worked with tremendous directors in Last Boy Scout specifically. That was definitely a lot of testosterone.
I bet. And Bruce was a doll, and Tony was he was a lot of takes. I just remember like 80, 90, 100 takes.
Why Tony?
Yeah. And again, rest in peace. But I do think, like, so the guy who directed Andre, who's George Miller, I think. Now there's two George Millers, but he's the Australian George Miller, or are they both Australian?
The Mad Max George Miller.
Somebody needs to IMDb this.
Right. Research George Miller.
Well,
anyways, I think it might not be the Mad Max. It might be the other one, but he directed
Man from
Paramount
Snowy River, George Miller. Man from Snowy River. He did.
Okay. Yes. Are you looking that up?
I did look that up.
Okay.
Confirmed?
Good.
Just throwing things.
Everything. I just want to like publicly say I haven't looked anything else up to this point.
Zach has a reputation to uphold.
I do have a reputation.
I'm lying to you, but
listen, I did the movies and I can't remember stuff. So, it's all good. Anyway, now why did I bring up Andre?
You're working with Tony.
We were talking
Scott
about Last Boy Scout. Oh, so yes. So George Miller and Blake Edwards were two of the directors that I worked with that I felt either had directed enough or had enough confidence or was old school or whatever, that they did not use the monitor. And I know this is really old school, but they would sit there. George would sit on the back of the camera, like off to the side next to the camera guy. And he would just watch the scene. And then he'd turn to to camera A or camera B and say, did you guys get that? Yeah. Or no, we need to move the actor, 2 inches to the left or whatever. Right. Let's go again. And he'd watch the scene. And then he would, say print when he found what he liked. And he never went and checked the monitor. Wow. And neither did Blake. Always sat in front, just watching the scene. And I do have to say that I was so glad as a younger actor I was older, but it was the beginning of my career to work with those men, because there's so much that you miss when you're looking at a monitor and, trying to see, is the background right? And this and that. And there's such amazing, subtle things that happen when you're present in the scene that you can't possibly get watching a monitor, but it will be on the film. It will be, you will have gotten that magic in the scene, but you may not know it, and those guys, those men, I think really knew their stuff. And Tony was from the other camp, and I'm not saying he didn't know his stuff. He was a great action director, definitely. But he would do 80, 100 takes. And, that was also the days where, they were giving cars to people when a movie would open and it would do well. So there was so much excess money then.
Now they give kind bars to actors.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You get a gift
all
card.
the stuff you can get for free anyways. So.
Yeah, gift card from Amazon.
Yeah.
A Trader Joe's gift card.
Speaking of interesting directors, we've covered Hardware and Color Out of Space on Podcasting After Dark, two Richard Stanley films. And Dust Devil was his sophomore follow-up to Hardware. What was your experience with working with him?
Kind of a blank. He was a nice man, strange, odd person, but you're working in the world of art, so it's all good. I got very sick on that film, and I had horrible parasites, which the doctor in Namibia told me that it was an infected gallbladder, and so only eat fruit and vegetables. So that's all I ate, and of course I was reinfecting myself every time I was eating fruits and vegetables. It was a nightmare. When I got to England, I took the plane home to England, and I fell in my brother. He's gone now, but he at the time was living in England. And I went to his house, and like the next night I had this really high fever, and the doctor came in and said, she opens her little doctor bag and she goes, "Okay, well, have you been traveling?" And I said, "Yeah, I just got back from Africa." And she said, "Oh, well, we're going to the hospital." Because they have that, people fall off the plane all the time from Africa there. And so they have a very good system with dealing with it. But the conditions were horrible on that movie. And there was obvious reasons why I got so sick, which I won't go into, but they were just terrible, terrible conditions. Oof. And I enjoyed that film a lot. I enjoyed being there when I wasn't sick. The landscape was just beautiful. Again, it was also a film kind of like Prison, where there wasn't a lot of dialogue. And so there was a lot of, when I read the script, I remember thinking, this is really interesting, but it could go two ways. It could go the way I'm thinking, which could be really, really interesting, or it could go more the other way. And it went the other way.
Hence the reason why there's like 5 cuts of that movie, by the way.
Yeah.
So
yeah, are there?
Yeah. There's like 3 or 4 different versions of it. So.
Yeah, and it's really hard to find in the States. We'll cover it if there's ever a good Blu-ray drop of it, but it's hard to find now at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the producers and the director, it was all, there were just so many versions that everybody had in their mind. I just don't know that there was one cohesive, And Meryl Poster, who was like the exec from Miramax, I don't even know if she knew what they wanted either.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then knowing what happened with his Island of Dr. Moreau, because they made a whole documentary on that. So that all kind of tracks, basically.
Yeah.
Was the vision for everyone to get violently ill, do you think? Probably not.
No, but I literally it was a life changer for me. You're so far from home, you're alone.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but a couple of the executives were really not professional the way they behaved. And I'm like literally like shaking like this from a fever. And the actor I worked with, Robert
Burke.
John Burke.
Yeah.
Take that, Zach.
Wait, is it John or Robert?
Robert John Burke.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. He was so worried. He was like, "Oh my God, you've got to go to the hospital." And they ended up getting a doctor for me, but gave me the wrong diagnosis. But yeah, it was not.
Oh God, sounds awful.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Good work,
Corey.
Yeah,
good
sorry,
work.
Brought that one
What
up.
was that experience like?
Well,
I don't remember a lot because I was dying the entire time.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, go ahead.
Well, no, it's not like it's not like a sore thing to talk about, because it was very, when you have bad experiences, you learn a lot from them.
Totally.
And quite frankly, they seduced me with a lot of fucking money for that job. And I learned my lesson. It was like, hey, I was hoping that the script would get better, that would be, it wasn't great on the page, but it'll get better. And, and it was Miramax. And so it was like, oh God, and they offered it to me, and it was like, they wined and dined me. Thank God I, missed out on, whatever his specialty was at those meetings.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, I remember
really
being asked to go meet him at the Polo Lounge. And it was like on a Saturday morning. And I remember saying to my manager, "What? Like,
Mhm.
what? On a Saturday? It was weird. And I did meet him, and his brother was there.
Hmm.
Came in, had the meeting, and walked out, and just thought that was weird, you know. And then they offered me a shitload of money, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll go to Africa. So I learned my lesson.
I'm glad you learned it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were bringing up, obviously bringing up good relationships, interesting relationships on these movies, but off air, we had brought up Hart Bachner because you have a relationship with him, and you did a movie with him called Complex of Fear.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, so Dustin and I before we became friends with Hart, we covered many of his movies on $2 late fee. We talked about The Wildlife, a movie he did in the 80s, which is essentially a loose sequel to Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And he plays such a good scumbag in that with a mustache. And he always had this great mustache, right, in the 80s and 90s. And you made that movie with him. Obviously, you have a relationship with him to this day. So it was a positive experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really great. And, it's funny as you're talking about all these movies, I'm like realizing I don't really remember much about the story of these movies. I mean, I remember Last Boy Scout and Masters and those stories, but a lot of these, it's like the story idea, but the experience with the people is what remains. So yeah, Hart and I became really good friends. We shot that down in Atlanta. He's just a doll and a half, and literally one of the best friends you can have. He knows how to be a really good friend, and he has a ton of good friends. He's friends with everybody. And we had fun, and I can remember the audition, and he was there when I read, and it was a great experience.
This was a huge honor. Seriously, this was absolutely amazing talking to you. Thank you again.
You're welcome. You guys are a lot of fun.
Well, so was Hart right, by the way?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
he was right.
Thank you so much,
All right.
Chelsea. And
Thank you, Chelsea.
Later,
take
guys.
care.
Have a great day.
All right. Bye.